Hello and welcome to this webinar on the power of real-time connectivity. We've got a lot to talk about today, and we'll be discussing the common pain points of treasury management and connectivity. We'll discuss what real-time connectivity actually means, and we'll talk about whether there's an easy way or a way to implement real-time connectivity without any significant effort. And if you do this, what kind of impact there will be on efficiencies. So let me go through the housekeeping notes. This webinar is 45 minutes long. It is live and it is being recorded. So you will have the opportunity to watch this again, and you can tell your friends about it and post it on LinkedIn. If you're watching this live, we want it to be interactive, and we want you to get involved and to be engaged as much as possible. So please send in your questions. You should see the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. So if you click on that, you can type your question. We'll do the questions as we go. So the earlier you send in the question, the better. So please get typing, and please keep your questions short and simple. We won't be identifying who has asked the questions. The audience won't see any question that you type. And when I ask the speakers the questions, I won't be identifying who has asked it. So with that anonymity, feel free just to ask whatever you like. All right, so let's do the introductions. I'll go first. So my name is Jane Cooper. I'm a financial journalist and I'm the new editor of TMI. I like all things treasury management, transaction banking, and financial technology. Okay, Pablo, do you want to go first? Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Jen. Thanks for inviting me to the webinar. So my name is Pablo Leguina. I lead the operations and customer success team at Embat. We are a treasury management solution that has been around for close to 5 years now. And prior to this role, I spent around 15 years of my career leading finance teams in major corporations. And then the last 10 years before joining Embat, I was CFO of private equity and venture capital businesses, mainly on the technology and the digitally enabled businesses.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. And Severine.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. So I'm the treasurer of Aliaxis, which brings to the world solution to the water challenges. I've been with Aliaxis for 3 years and have embarked on leading the transformation journey for our treasury organization. Before that, I worked for 15 years at Honeywell and 7 years at GMAC, always in treasury. I think I will die in treasury. So I love particularly the mix of treasury and technology and how it can help us to have more strategic action as a treasurer and how it can enrich the quality of the job of our teams in general.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so this webinar, the topic is the power of real-time connectivity. So let's first sort of set the scene and sort of define what the problem and the challenges are. So maybe Pablo, you want to sort of start us off.
Sure.
As you see it, what are the common pain points with connectivity?
Yeah, so real-time connectivity is made up of, let's say, 2 words, connectivity and sort of real time, 2 or 3 words. Okay, so connectivity has been around for a long time. I mean, connectivity, you can use protocols like Swift, like host to host, like local protocols like BACS in the UK to run direct debits and direct credits, or EBIX in Central Europe. So and the issue around connectivity has always been the same, or at least I think that three main issues. Okay. Accessing data, accessing bank balances, accessing your net debt position, not depending on manual processes, not depending on somebody logging in every morning or every week and updating that Excel spreadsheet where you keep all your bank balances and your debt positions. And it surprises me the number of companies, reasonably big companies, that still run on this fashion. Okay, accessing also the second pain point would be accessing transaction data. Okay, so mainly around your collections, because it's where you probably don't have as much visibility as you would like. And finally, also sending payment files. Okay, this is I would identify these 3 pain points in terms of having manual processes, having security issues, because if you don't have connectivity, what you probably have are a number of banking credentials, flowing around, people leaving companies and not having that access removed, dependency on local teams, particularly if you're in jurisdictions on different time zones. So I think in a nutshell, this will be the main pain points that I see around connectivity. Okay. Now, yeah.
Yep. Got
Okay.
Let's see if there's a lot there. There's loads. So I wonder, Severine, what's your sort of top, I don't know, 3, or maybe you have more, your pain points with connectivity?
Well, I think some of the pain points you highlight, Pablo, is when you don't have the connectivity, actually. So for me, connectivity is really the way to unlock value in a company, because otherwise you just have silos of data in one place or another. But typically, the information is a lot richer when you can cross information. In terms of connectivity, if I speak of Aliaxis, when I joined, we were nearly nowhere. We are now setting up Swift, and we are at the end of that cycle. The difficulty has been first to connect physically the ERPs to a single platform, CPI in our case, with the difficulty that locally we don't necessarily have local IT, or they're not used to doing that kind of job. Second difficulty is that we want to do connectivity to get to our new treasury management system and payment hubs. Well, those are from a provider. One is in SaaS, the other one is hosted. Well, you need to manage the two pieces, right? So as a treasurer, you need to make sure that you get the information internally from your IT, and that the service provider can do that work as well. It can be very technical, and you want to avoid the ping-pong topics. I have an example today of an API which has been there for a number of times, small change on the bank side. Well, we get half of the data, right? We get the intraday, we get the end of day, and on one side they say it's because the bank doesn't send it. On the other side, they say it's because the system provider doesn't go and fetch it, right? We'll resolve it for sure. But connectivity, it's the sending point, the receiving point, both need to be aligned. And then the frequency, what shape do you choose? Do you go with for API? Do you go for Swift? Host to host, what is the best model? Sometimes price can be very, very different. Sometimes you are limited, for instance, by your service provider if they're not that converse with APIs, for instance.
Yeah.
I think a lot of banks develop APIs, but they develop their end, right? And you have your piece as a corporate. You need to make sure where does it end, and how do you make that live if you don't have a large IT team?
Yeah. For me, sorry, I was going to mention a point there. The point around resources and cost of connectivity. You know, one of the benefits of I initially start talking about connectivity, you know, and then there's real-time connectivity. And real-time connectivity
Absolutely.
really it is API connectivity, okay? And I think there has been a change in paradigm on how certain IT projects or connectivity projects can be run in the last few years. Connectivity 10, 15, 20 years ago, banking connectivity was limited to major corporations because running a Swift connection is not cheap at all. You know, you're gonna have to invest a lot of money and a lot of time from your own teams. You know, even a host-to-host connection, which may be slightly cheaper and slightly less onerous in terms of resources, it requires maintenance, probably from your IT team, probably from the bank's team. This is sometimes not the priority of some of these teams, which need to be involved in the business. If it's your IT team or the banks, who probably are not this is not the area where they make the most of their benefits. Right now we've got the ability to connect via API to either directly to banks or even using third-party providers, which like there are TMSs like us, like Embat. We have been developing 5 years real-time connectivity via API, and this is something that we've sort of bulletproof. We've got connection with a lot of banks. We suffer issues as well. I'm not gonna say that everything is rosy, but it's our bread and butter. So API connectivity using a partner that has done it, I think it sort of gives you an edge over doing it yourself.
How important is it for it to be real-time connectivity? Can you just have the connectivity without the APIs in the real time? Does it have to be real time?
Maybe I want to first echo on what Pablo was saying, that I agree that Swift connectivity can be complex, but with the emergence of Swift service bureaus, I think it's still a lot lighter than it used to be. Now, on the API, the problem so far is that you have the lack of standardization amongst banks. And yes, you can go via aggregator, but they will never cover your 50 banks in your company. So you need to rationalize your number of banks first so that you minimize the number of connectivities that you need, and then select what is the best way to connect with those limited number of partner banks. I think it's important that you put some order in your banking landscape before you start connecting all around. Of course, to get bank statement in, that's pretty easy with an aggregator. But if you want to use really connectivity to make payments or to have more sophisticated usage, I think it's important to first do the bank rationalization. Now, in terms of connectivity or real time, I think there are a number of elements that really make a difference. I would say in general, for the B2B, most of the benefit is in really in the connectivity itself. The real time will be a bit the cherry on the cake to allow quicker cash application and better working capital, or unlock potentially some credit lines with some customers. Or it can be very useful, of course, for the treasury team to manage the cash the most effectively and make sure that you don't leave money on the table that you could have invested because you only know it hours later. But for B2C companies, the real-time connectivity is even more sensitive, because you have a lot more interactions, maybe low value, but a lot more interactions, and it can become as part of your business model. Having this real-time connectivity becomes really useful. For instance, for if you think of an insurance company that puts on some smart contracts and they can pay you within 2 hours instead of 3 or 5 days or whatever when they go with the batch process, I think it can become important part to really sustain the business as itself. I don't know, Pablo, what you would say.
No, I fully agree with Severin. I think real time might not be needed for every business. I mean, and probably, as Severin was saying, you may end up with a different suite of connections. Because it is true that APIs in certain geographies are still to be developed. Coverage in Europe, the US. The Western world, probably it's wider than if you go down to South America or even if you go to Asia. Okay, but and the benefits of real-time connectivity. Some of the things that Severin has said. Making informed decisions around usage of liquidity lines. On time and making sure that you are able to optimize your cost of funding, your cost of financing. Operational efficiency, particularly for companies that work with payment service providers like PayPal or like Stripe. If you're an e-commerce, making sure that you can keep your receipts reconciled on a real-time basis, where you have a extremely high volume, low value. It's gonna be a benefit. So APIs, real-time connectivity, just to summarize, might not be for everybody, but it's there for some businesses to take the advantage and improve their operational efficiency and their capital structure and optimize their working capital.
Yeah,
and then you have, of course, the in-between, which is the intraday, where often, having intraday statement every 15 minutes, the marginal benefit of having real API is relatively limited. Now, intraday bank statement have a cost. So again, you need to assess what are really your needs. Sometimes shooting for the API for sure, because it's the most mature, doesn't make sense. So you need to do that really benefits analysis, like we've done. So we've put APIs for our treasury.
Can you tell us more about that then? Can you tell us
Yeah.
about the kind of journey that you've had? And now that you've done this, what did you wish that you knew when you started, now that you've done it?
I wish had known that for the mix of our bank and our service provider, it was the first time. And both of them, we've done it. Well, in fact, they hadn't done it to the extent that we wanted. And it was the same when I speak of connectivity in terms of money market fund platforms. Yes, they had done some exchange of files for the trades, but when you want all of it to work, the interest capitalization or interest settlement, the revaluation, etc., for CNAV, but also for VNAV, then you see that you have to do a lot of work and build something. While if you speak to them initially, it's always, oh yeah, it's off the shelf, we've done it. Well, you've done it. They've done it the 81st%, right? The 80% that are easy. When you want to reach the 20% and have really something that is fully automated, full way, well, you discover that in fact, you're the first ones. Okay, you know that after the fact. So, okay, we're very proud we're the first ones, but sometimes you just want to be the second or third. That would be good enough, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna interject there, because I guess that it depends on what stage of the journey you are, because I see a lot of clients, reasonably big clients, that are, at the inception of their digital transformation of a treasury team. Okay, so sometimes 80% delivery, it's what you need to get up and running, to get to, and then obviously you get the margin, the extra 20%, which gives you, like the additional benefits. But yeah, of course, I agree with Severin, but I think sometimes 80% delivery is a major improvement for certain businesses, which are like maybe 2 or 3 steps behind to where Severin may be now.
So how easy was it for you, Severin, and what sort of time frame are we talking about the journey of doing all this?
If I look, so different type of connectivity that we have set up. Well, we have set up connectivity between our ERPs and the TMS, etc. In average, between 3 to 9 months to connect an ERP to our system. It's really huge. It's really our own difficulty to get really the right IT people, whether internal or external, who can do it. If you speak of the connectivity, the whole SWIFT setup, SWIFT Service Bureau, etc., that was pretty quick, a few weeks, really not painful. If you think of connecting our banks via SWIFT, the biggest hurdle on our side has been negotiating the score agreement. We have a very enthusiastic legal team, and it took up till 19 months was the record, I would say, to negotiate a score agreement, right? So it's not always technical, the obstacle, right? 19 months. If you speak of the connectivity in terms of the API that we put, before it really delivered what we wanted, I think it was almost a year, which is very long when you think what we want to do with it. The connectivity with the money market fund platform into our TMS, and I think of the full stage, right? It took probably 18 months before we really got 100% of what we want, ability to manage CNAV, VNAV in the whole life cycle of the. So it's quite painful, right? And I don't, of course, this is the start end, right? You have some pause in there, waiting for feedback, doing the tests, right? You need to align the stars and keep people motivated and working on it and focusing. And that's despite quite active project management teams that we have, right? But at the end, what counts is that you get there, right? And if you keep your vision clear and you know where you want to be, in total, it's not necessarily a lot of work, but steps take a lot of time because people just don't have the answers to your questions. So they on their end, they don't know. They're asking questions, they don't know, right? So it can be frustrating before you find the right consultant on either side that will be able to unlock. And often, as you know, right, it just asks for the good person that knows about it in a big corporation.
Yeah, it sounds like you need a lot of patience. How does that sort of echo with what you experience, Pablo? Is that sort of like normal to hear that kind of
I guess that it depends on the size of the business. It depends. I mean, obviously, Severin business is a very global business, 45 countries. I guess that many regional treasury centers. Obviously, if you are smaller in terms of size, maybe presence only in Europe, presence only in certain geographies. My experience is that the project is not going to take that long. Okay, I've got clients here at Embat that we get them up and running on all their European banking portfolio, UK and continental Europe in a matter of weeks. Sometimes obviously if you've got very specific products or very specific, that this may require a little bit more of time to develop. In terms if you're looking at products outside what is like the vanilla portfolio of current accounts, funding lines, etc. You may need a little bit more of time. And something that also helps is how is also if you think about connectivity with ERP, something that Severin mentioned, because we've been focusing on connectivity with the bank side, but also all that information needs to be digested into your accounting system. It also helps if your ERP is cloud native, and many companies are still dependent on legacy systems implemented many years ago. But many companies that have embarked in project management changes and now have ERPs sitting in the cloud, they've got an advantage in terms of developing connectivity with APIs. So my sort of advice in this sense is if you're embarking yourself in a digitalization project of your treasury area or your accounting area or your finance area, look for ERPs that are native in the cloud, and sometimes sacrifice a little bit of that customization on the for having something that is more developed from a technology point of view. Yeah.
And I couldn't agree more. We've been suffering a lot from having multiple versions of ERP, some of them very old, and the changing landscape, right? Because they are very old, so they want to we are updating them, upgrading, changing. So you need to find the right moment to start your connectivity. You don't want to do it on something that is going to be caduc in 6 months. At the same time, you want to have your exhaustivity. So just being able to track those projects internally, you can experience some delays, and definitely the maturity of the system. Sometimes it's very old systems. Nobody has put their hands in the machine for sometimes years, right? So you're asking them things that you think are very simple, but they just use the system, but there is no really someone who knows the machine and the heart of the machine. So sometimes reliant on external people to be able to provide advice. So you have to try to build internal knowledge when you have several places where you have the same version, but it takes a lot of time. And it's a changing landscape. So unfortunately, we are not in the cloud in that aspect. And as a treasurer, you rarely have the opportunity to influence that. but that's where everybody will land one way or another.
And Severine, can you talk us through what kind of challenges you had with data? Is it just a sort of massive cleanup operation before you even start? I imagine you just got bits all over the place and sometimes you don't know what stuff is or where it is. Can you talk us through that?
Yes, and we're not yet where we would like to be, but we've done a long way. First, when I joined, in terms of treasury data, it was very limited. We just had a system for the in-house bank, but anything outside the in-house bank, we didn't have a view on a central basis, except the consolidation tool on a monthly basis, which one would argue is not very detailed, right? So we have set up the treasury management system, and we had to define a lot of conventions, just having a unique entity code in the company, right, to start with. So we had to build that kind of data. We set up the TMS, and we had to do intensive training on the teams and to keep that and change the mindset that data in treasury, it's today. It's not at the end of the month. It's today that you need it. It's forward-looking. So treasury, we want to know where do we sit today and where shall we be in a day, in a month, in a week, etc. So it's a change of mindset about how data is managed, as opposed to an accounting system that is looking at yesterday up till today. So you have this aspect. Then if you think of master data in the ERPs, an example is we have changed our banks in the 10 LATAM countries. Well, in all those countries, we didn't have the master data of our suppliers that were not paid in local currency. So we had to do really massive cleanup of this master data. We first cleaned the number of suppliers from 50,000 to 13,000. And then for all of those, we worked on filling up all the master data, structuring, for the new, ahead of the new regulation, structuring the address, etc. So we had to deal with, the local team dealt with 270,000 fields of data that's been renewed, right? So data start by having clean master data, right? Then you have access to other type of data for cash forecasting, for FX management, and there it's still very, very difficult. We don't yet have really a strong central governance on data. We are working towards this, but it's not yet here on deciding which are the elements of data that should correspond to certain criteria or conventions. So it's very difficult for us to leverage the data that are in the various ERPs. Now, at least we have done the connectivity with all those ERPs, or we will have by the end of this year. So we will have the ability to retrieve data from all those ERPs, but it's completely unstructured, not governed, not to speak about the mindset that data is a corporate asset. Like cash is a corporate asset, data is a corporate asset. You shouldn't have to ask affiliates whether it's fine for us to access their data. And to some extent, we are not yet there. So we still have a very long way to go. And I think the key will be really to enforce the data quality management to the people producing the data, rather than putting it on the people using the data, so that you can have something that is sustainable and can be a lot more agile if you know that set of data is clean, follows similar conventions, etc. So we are embarking on that journey. We have a data lake in Europe, but at the moment it's just one place where several European entities push their data in silos, right? So this is not a data lake, right? With all different conventions. So we have a very long way to go, but slowly, I think we are really making progress on this idea of having central governance about a number of data that are really needed for key financial decisions or reporting.
And Pablo, do you have any comments? I've got lots of other questions for you, but do you have any comments on that, on the data?
Standardization of data is difficult for sure. You know, we even see that with API connectivity. You know, like sometimes you are used to receive data from a bank through API in a certain way. They change the way they send it out. Well, Severin was mentioning it before, you know, and eventually you're getting 50% of the data that you were receiving. So it's an issue to manage internally within big corporations, but it is also an issue to manage externally if your provider, if your API provider, if the partner that you work with is not diligent and does not basically informs you of potential changes in advance. So fully agree with what Severin was mentioning around data criticality. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant.
I think it's important to keep, to set up some monitoring on the data quality, and that everybody along the chain understands what the data they produce is going to be used for, and likewise, right? Because it's easy to think we're going to solve it with some mapping tables, but if they change a convention at the source, well, your mapping table may be no use, for instance, right? So it's important that you have this monitoring and have some reports that can identify missing data or data that is out of range. And it's a constant monitoring, not only for the IT teams. It should be wider.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, if the solution to sort out the data quality issues is create more work, then the whole purpose of connectivity goes away, you know?
Fully agree.
So,
no?
Yeah. Okay, let's pause for a moment. We've got some questions from the audience. So if you're watching this live, please do send in your questions. We've got about 15 minutes left, so we do have a bit more time for some questions. So please type them if you're watching live. Okay, Pablo, I'm going to ask you a couple of them. Okay, what are the key factors that can affect the smooth running of connectivity?
For sure, technical factors. APIs are still, you know, a relatively new piece of technology. They have not been around for decades. They have been around for maybe 1 decade, okay, you know, but not decades. And they are different from one back to another or from different providers, you know. So you need to be, diligent in who do you work with in terms of connecting via API. Make sure you get references. Make sure you've got you do a proper due diligence of who you are going to marry with in terms of getting API connectivity. Other technical factors will be your own internal legacy systems, you know, because sometimes it's not that the APIs are not ready. Sometimes it's that your systems are not ready to connect via API. Okay. And sometimes it's also availability of resources within your own company. Okay, so I was saying in non-technological companies, the IT team is not as big as it might be in technology businesses, you know, and they have to support the whole business. You know, they have to support the day-to-day of your business, but also all the support functions, finance, people, marketing, etc., etc. So having those resources to help you out on a connectivity project might not be that easy, you know, and there might be, you know, like a pipeline of projects, and you need to put your fist on the table to make yourself top of the list, and that sometimes is an issue. Okay, so technology factors for sure.
Okay, brilliant. Severin, I'm going to ask you a question about for people watching this, maybe they're thinking of considering doing something similar to what you did. What advice would you give them before they start?
First, have very strong project managers. I'm spoiled to be supported by PwC Treasury team. I think it's very important, because it's very easy for those projects, as Pablo said, to fall down the list. So you need really people that keep following on, doing the tests, being really ensure that as soon as a step is there, that you unlock, you do your test on time, you follow through. So I think it's very important, the strong project management. It's very important to communicate with the IT team, with the business, what you're doing, why you're doing it, what will be the benefits, right? For you and for them. I think it's very important that they understand it's not just for the sake of it, or that it will help to unlock value for the company. So I think that's very important. And yes, try to have a very strong documentation of what you're doing during the implementation, right? So for instance, I'm building a country profile from a treasury systems maturity. What are the connectivity for each entity? What is it used for? Why for this specific entity did we go host to host? Why normally we go via Swift? There was a good reason. What is that? Explain which backup solution you've put in place, so that you have a very transparent profile of the entities, and you know for this type of connectivity, what is the maintenance that is required, who's in charge, who are your contacts, right? Just that you don't lose this history, because sometimes people put something in place, they know very well, then they leave, right? And then you're there, when something goes wrong, you have a black box, your black box does not deliver what you expect, and you're a little bit lost. So it's very important that you do that documentation at the time that you are building your connectivity landscape, so that you have that knowledge base, and that nothing becomes a black box that nobody knows what's supposed to do to maintain or to support, so that it's a lot easier if something happens to know who to call, what were the particularities that we may have decided as a setup, especially any time that your setup is not the standard one that you've designed. And it will happen, right? Standard is, you cannot go 100% standard in every country for every connectivity.
And Pablo, Severine talked there about unlocking a value. Can you sort of tell us more about what the impact and the potential is? Can you really hit us with what the impact is?
Yeah, we've mentioned some of the benefits, some of the potential benefits, of having connectivity in real time before. But from the more operational aspects of, not having to invest the time of your people in doing manual tasks like updating bank balances, getting the transaction data on a manual basis, automating non-value-adding tasks within your teams, like the bank reconciliation, which everybody hates, but at the end of the day is an audit requirement. Well, you need to be able to do that, as simple as possible, and real-time connectivity gives you that possibility. To more probably strategic aspects of treasury, like making sure that you do adequate use of your working capital lines on a real-time basis, and not taking decisions based on the yesterday's or 1 week's information. Okay. Yes. So I would say that operational efficiency and being able to make more informed decisions that at the end of the day benefit your treasury area.
And is there an easy place for people to start? Can they do it in baby steps, just kind of dip their toe in and test that this is something they want to do, or does it have to be a big bang transformation?
We've got clients that are taking a phase approach. Big corporations like Severine's may have more control over certain countries of their business. Like, it's easier to start maybe with your business in your headquarters, or your business in your main region, and once you have something that is proved, that is working, then you can do a rollout phase other geographies with the same scope or less scope, because at the end of the day there's going to be limitations on what you can do around real-time connectivity in certain geographies, like we were saying before. So if you're expecting to be able to connect your China business via API, that is going to be difficult at this point in time. But certainly you can access maybe certain pieces of information on a more automated basis, and take that baby step approach that you were mentioning.
Quite a lot of the audience questions are quite specific and quite specific to Pablo and Embat. So I think we're not going to have time to go through them, but I've just seen that Pablo is on LinkedIn. So if anyone watching this live wants to follow up, maybe that would be more appropriate for some of the, questions that are coming through.
Shoot me a message through my LinkedIn, and if I'm not the right person in Embat, I will put you in contact with the right one.
Yeah, because there's a lot of questions here for you, and we're not going to have time to get through this. So yeah, please do that with Pablo. Severine, I have a question about people. You said sometimes it's about the mindset change. Do you find that sometimes it's more of a people problem than a technology problem when you go through a big transformation?
I don't like to think of people as a problem. I like to think of it as an opportunity of development. I think in principle, our employees want to do the best for the company. Now, certain type of education has not always reached them. So you need to ensure that you empower them to be able to support your transformation. Definitely, we may be lacking certain profiles in the company. So you can temporarily compensate by hiring some consultant in whichever area. I think it's important to build the knowledge internally as you are going up on the maturity profile. So that can be by developing existing people, or it can be by hiring people just to fill the skill gap. And of course, I'm talking treasury, but of course also IT or even some other functions that may be in contact. So I think data ultimately is always produced by one person at the source, right? There is one person or a group of or a team that owns the data, right? So you need to get right to that person so that they understand that this is the gold mine of the company. And you need people to understand that what they put in is going to be used for the next step, and along the chain, right? And that we don't want to have this destruction of that gold, right, along the way. And for this, everyone that touches the data should understand this is our gold mine. We know that cash is king, information is queen, right? Yeah. And information means data that is put in a very structured manner or that can be displayed. Now we have generative AI, which can do a lot with unstructured data, right? That's of course something that will help, but it has its limitation, right? So you still need some kind of data quality. Even if you can absorb unstructured data, you still need quality data. And that's something that we need to think of each of every other employee as being someone owning some piece of data, right?
Okay. We're going to have to wrap up soon. Before we do our sort of final thoughts and wrap-ups and summaries, maybe, Pablo, is there anything else you want to add to that before we do the closing?
No, nothing else. It's fine.
Okay, then let's sort of take about sort of 30 seconds or 45 seconds each as a kind of a final thought or closing statement. Maybe, Severine, do you want to go first? Just sort of a final thought or last thing you want to say that wraps up everything?
If I want to say a final thought on connectivity, to me, it's really the key to unlock value in your data. you have to think of the cost benefit of different type of connectivity depending on what is the usage you're going to do with your data. And you can go up the maturity ladder, start with a certain type of connectivity, and over time change it. It's not for forever. It's for a certain time, but it's not forever. And speak to your partners, speak to your bankers, speak to your IT team, bring multi-functional teams together to make that assessment. I think it would be my main recommendation.
Okay, and Pablo, final thoughts from you?
Yeah, well, my final thought would be that real-time connectivity is a reality. You know, it's here to stay, it's here to develop. Many years ago, connectivity was a matter of months. Now, connectivity could be a matter of days or weeks, you know? So fully agree with Severin. Make sure you do your due diligence properly. But real-time connectivity is a reality. So and it's gonna help unlock value and become more efficient on your day-to-day.
Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you both very much. Thank you, Severin, and thank you, Pablo. And thank you very much to the audience for watching this. And goodbye from all of us.
Bye-bye.